AMD stock is up nearly 5% after finishing their Financial Analyst Day. And on today's episode, we're going to look at some crazy numbers that they're projecting within the next 3 to 5 years. We're actually going to look at a few slides. There were hundreds of slides today, but we're going to look at roughly like the top 10 slides that every AI and AMD investor should know and why you should be excited about the future potential of this company. So let's take a closer look in today's episode.
I want to thank The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and check out fool.com/Jose for the 10 best stocks to buy now. With that link, you get a promotional offer for their subscription service. Now, let's continue with today's episode.
All right, so AMD right now we can see sitting at $249, up roughly 5% after hours. Most of the event happened throughout the whole day. It was over a 4-hour event. And we saw things like total addressable market growth, about future earnings per share. And that's probably going to be the last slide we talk about. But overall, the stock has done really well, sitting at a market cap of roughly $400 billion now with this a recent price target hike. But we got even more excitement about the future of the AI market, the future of not just the GPU, but also the CPU. So the first thing they start off with was talking about their data center growth and their core business. Their core business at the moment is definitely the CPU market. Eventually, that will change to more of an AI GPU space, but record server CPU market share has gone up to 40% in 2025. That is insane. We can see we are taking that market share from companies like Intel, and this has been a great road for AMD. Now, AMD also talks about their semi-custom design wins and their lifetime revenue. And in 2020, their lifetime revenue was roughly $20 billion, and that is mainly coming from the gaming side. Now, in 2025, their design wins lifetime revenue is about $45 billion. And it's dealing with more than just gaming now, right? Their semi-custom solutions has gone to the aerospace and defense, to the automotive, to the data center, to the gaming, and to the wireless market. Now, one of the biggest, this is not the biggest slide, but one of the biggest slides that I think everybody got excited about was AMD talking about their data center total addressable market. And this includes CPUs, GPUs, and a lot of other solutions within it. It's not just one product. And this is expected to be over $1 trillion by 2030, where right now in 2025 is roughly 200 billion. That's a compounded annual growth rate of over 40%. So obviously, if you are any form of AI investor, this should be seen as an extremely bullish case because in my opinion, AMD is usually one of those players that tends to be very conservative. And they try not to overhype things, especially Lisa Su. I believe she tries to calm everything down. And for her to be presenting this type of information, this type of number, it gets me excited for, again, not just an AMD shareholder. It could be an NVIDIA, it could be a Broadcom, it could be a Arista Networks, it could be an AI infrastructure player. The overall story is that AI is going to continue to grow. And if they're spending this type of money, is because they're projecting, or those other businesses are projecting to make money out of AI solutions. Now, they talk about kind of the strategic partners driving an inflection in growth. They talk about OpenAI. They talk about Oracle, Meta, and the Department of Energy, all which we heard about, right? OpenAI with that 6 gigawatts of AI compute, Oracle with 50,000 MI450s, Meta co-developing with the Helios rack for OCP, and the Department of Energy for creating massive AI supercomputers for the government space, right? So overall, these are the four things really driving this inflection growth right now. Now, what gets extremely exciting for AMD is the data center and AI revenue opportunity within the next 3 to 5 years. And if you saw the presentation, they didn't give a set timeline. They just gave a range between 3 to 5 years. And I believe that's actually perfect. Even if we put a lot of these numbers to the 5-year mark, in my opinion, as we're going to see, earnings per share is still pretty damn impressive. Now, if this is your first time here, make sure to check me out at whatthechipHappened.com. If you want a free newsletter, that's the best place to go at. Or if you want to enter a community of semiconductor and AI investors, where I do deep dives almost every single weekday. We just talked about CoreWeave there. We just talked about iron. Later today, I will be releasing one on Nebulas and so many more. AMD's financial event. So check out whatthechipHappened.com if you want to join the community of over 150 members so far. So, and also subscribe to the channel if you just want free videos. Now, in form of the data center market, they believe data center AI revenue has a compounded annual growth rate of roughly 80%. And this is the type of market share they're also expecting. So they didn't give a market share on AI GPUs, but they did mention that the data center AI revenue, like I mentioned, that compounded annual growth rate of roughly 80%. But they do expect within the next 3 to 5 years that server revenue market share, and this is server CPU, is expected to be over 50%. So not the best news for Intel. Let me actually see if Intel stock saw any form of movement after this. No, not really. But they expect to continue to win market share here. In the client revenue, they continue to win. They expect to win up to over 40% market share, and the adaptive revenue market share to over 70%. Now, how are they going to do this? First, in the data center market, the continuing design of their CPU pipeline, we can see right now we are in the Turin platform. Next generation is going to be the Venice. Now, for the AI GPU market, we can see that in 2026, we have the MI400, and obviously in 2027, we do have the MI500. So this was actually one of the first times we've heard AMD really talk a little bit more about the MI500, even if it was just small slides like this, which I think is very exciting and should get the overall market pretty happy. Now, if we continue to understand that AI is not just driving demand for GPUs, AMD actually believes AI is creating an inflection driving point for CPU consumption. And here in the yellow, this is the type of core CPU revenue that is being driven by AI market. And that tends to be the biggest market growth right now. It's expected to see this market see at a compounded annual growth rate of roughly 18%. So in 2030, 18% is going to give you at $60 billion. Now, remember, AMD mentions that the CPU market, they expect over 50% market share. So just in CPUs, AMD believes they can do roughly $30 billion by 2030. A little bit more than that, right? They mentioned at least 50%. Now, data center revenue is expected to grow at a 60% compounded annual growth rate within the next 3 to 5 years, and they expect over 100 billion annual data center revenue. Now, this is impressive because remember, this is a company sitting at a market cap of roughly $400 billion. So if these numbers come true in the next 3 to 5 years, AMD is extremely cheap at these levels. Now, I only have two more slides that I want to showcase, but next we have AMD's revenue growth projection. So they break it down into two markets. The data center market, which is CPUs and GPUs in the server space, they expect this to grow over 60% over the next 3 to 5 years. Now, their core business, which is their client, their gaming, and their embedded, they expect it to grow over 10%. Together, AMD expects roughly over 35% revenue growth, compounded annual growth rate within the next 3 to 5 years, which is extremely bullish. Now, the biggest is the data center momentum and the gains in shares. Now, they are expected gross margins to be around 55 to 58%, operating margins over 35%, and free cash flow of about 25%. Now, the biggest thing, and what I believe is creating the best excitement for AMD shareholders, is earnings per share. They believe within the next 3 to 5 years, earnings per share is over $20. Remember, right now, AMD stock is sitting at roughly $237, right? $237. So earnings per share right now, this would be at a PE ratio of, what is that? About not even 15, right? Maybe closer to 12. Yeah, closer to 12, maybe 12.5 over here. So if you see these numbers, and again, obviously looking at the next 5 years, that's a lot of wait time, but you see the potential of AMD. I mean, if you give this evaluation, right, typical semiconductor market has a PE ratio of roughly 30. Even if you do over 20 times 30, that gives you a price target of roughly $600 in the next 5 years. So this is very exciting, and this is actually the number that AMD talked about with that open AI. Is it a coincidence? Remember, open AI's their last trenches by 2030 is somewhere around $600. And that would be AMD at a $1 trillion company. So this gets me pretty excited. I do believe their presentation was really good. Again, this was just a very quick overview for a very deep dive analysis on this. Make sure to check out the community at whatthechiphappened.com. So take care, have a good day, and see you all next time.